Jack Canfield's Breakthroughs to Success home study course now continues. Enjoy.
How many of you, by show of hands, save 10 to 20% of every dollar you make? Let me see. Okay. Keep your hands up. The rest of you look around at the future millionaires. All right, put your hands down. I'm not going to go into this in great depth. I write about it in my book, and I recommend David Bach's book, The Automatic Millionaire. And you can also read The Richest Man in Babylon. But the basic idea is if you want to be automatically wealthy, just save 10 to 20%, 20 is better, 10 will do, of every dollar you make. And then invest it.
Before taxes or after?
Before. Now, I mentioned John DeMartini a couple days ago. I think I might be just a little loud, if you could bring me down a hair. I mentioned John DeMartini a couple days ago, and John is a multimillionaire, teacher, wonderfully wise guy, and he saves 50 cents of every dollar he makes, and he's done that since he was like 18 years old. And he tells his staff that 50 cents of every dollar that comes into the company is going to go into his investment accounts. And if they don't make enough to pay their own salaries, then that's their problem. Very interesting model. So instead of like, oh, it's my job to support you, I'm committed to 50 cents of every dollar I earn going into this account. So we need to make enough. We need to get creative to make sure that happens. Sir John Marks Templeton, retired, a billionaire. I know he's really tired, but a billionaire. And again, 50 cents of every dollar he ever made, he saved and then invested, and now he gives away much more than most of us will ever earn, unless, of course, we do earn more. But the idea being that you have to be an automatic saver and learn to live on the remainder. And you can get real creative and do it. In fact, someone was came up to ask me about brainstorming a title of a book, since I told him I was a good title person. And the title of the book he already had was How to Live Like a Millionaire on $5 a day. I thought, whoa, that's a great title. And so we know it's possible. And the neat thing is, if you do that, you can look at the math charts that are in all these books that talk about it. You know, if you start when you're in your late 20s and just make $25,000, $30,000 a year, you'll be an automatic millionaire. Now, it used to be you could do it in the stock market. The stock market's been flat for a while. You may need to do some other vehicles like land and so forth. There's real estate investment trusts. And I'm not going to do a financial seminar here. There are people who do that much better than me. But I want to strongly encourage you to at least do the 10 to 20%. I do 20%. And you know, as a result of that, I have a lot of assets that I wouldn't have had otherwise, because it would have been just as easy to spend it, travel more, buy more toys, etc. So strongly encourage you. And don't wait until you're making a lot of money. Start now. This idea of, you know, Wendy giving the extra money, tithing to charity, whatever. You can also tithe to your own wealth, if you will. So minimum of 10% to yourself, 10% to charity and those organizations that support your spiritual growth on the planet. Now, I see hands. Are they comments, questions? What is it? What do you have?
What was the author that you mentioned?
Okay, question. Two authors. One is a man named David Bach, B-A-C-H. He's become a good friend of ours over the last year. He wrote a book called The Automatic Millionaire. And for those of you that are not in your late 20s, which is most of you, he wrote another book called Start Late, Finish Rich. So you can start later. You just have to take a little more. And there's some other vehicles for accelerating the growth of the money. But I recommend very strongly that you have your attention on money. A lot of people think it's not spiritual to have your attention on money. And how many of you know who Ram Dass is? Well, Ram Dass had a stroke. And Ram Dass he gave all his money away forever. And all of a sudden, he was in a situation where he had no money. And he needed a lot of medical care. Unfortunately, because he gave away a lot of people love him, and a lot of people have come together to create a fund to help him keep going. But he was very embarrassed, and he felt some shame around it. And you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're totally dependent on others. In his case, I'm sure he'll do fine because so many of us love him. But I think the idea, again, is that you want to take 100% responsibility for that area of your life. It's an area where most of us are in denial. How many of you know what your exact net worth is? I mean, within several $1,000s or so. How many do not? Put your hands up. Okay, so you should. It's like knowing your blood pressure, your cholesterol count, your address, your social security number. It just means you're out of awareness in that area of your life. And so strongly encourage you to check that out. And in my book, I have a place where you can go. There's a net worth calculator website where you can put stuff in. And there's websites out there now where you can go and put in how much money you have, what your house is worth, and then what you want to be, how much money you want to have at retirement, and it'll calculate how much money you need to be saving. So there's lots of websites and financial planners, and really big supporter of financial planners, good ones. One of my friends is a guy named Lee Brower, who runs a company called Empowered Wealth and works with people to create a family bank. I won't go into this in great depth either, but one of the really, I think, tremendously exciting new concepts is instead of passing on cash to the next generation, which usually divides them up, research shows that usually in 3 generations all the wealth is gone. You remember the Vanderbilts? Richest guy in America at one point. 3 generations later at Vanderbilt University, they brought all the descendants, over 100 families with the last name Vanderbilt. Not one of them was a millionaire. 3 generations was all gone. Because what they passed on was money, but what they didn't pass on was the consciousness, the skills, the attitude, the resources to build and maintain that. And so the new concept is you create a family bank. So instead of passing on the money to the kids, you pass it on to a bank. You create a family trust that acts like a bank. And now anyone that wants to can come and borrow money from the bank, but they have to repay it. So it's a loan, it's not a gift. And there are 4 quadrants that have to be met in terms of the fulfillment of that loan. The money has to be paid back. There has to be some socially redeeming contribution to society that occurs with the use of that money. And then there has to be a social capital, or what they call intellectual capital. So let's say that my son Ka decided he wanted to borrow money from the family bank, and he wanted to create a real estate, buy some property and develop it and sell it for more. And socially, we might require that one of those acres be used to build a community center. It would be something that would be a contribution. We might require, since none of us have been that involved in real estate, that whatever he learns about it, he has to put it in some kind of manual or DVD to pass on to the next generation or the rest of the family. And there would also be the, I don't remember now, intellectual capital. There's another one I'm spacing out right now. I write about it in my book, but I haven't memorized it all. Sometimes you write things, you learn them, you use them, and then you don't totally memorize them. But very, very powerful, and I would recommend you look in that book so that we're passing on to our children not just money, but we're passing on our traditions, our values, our ethics. How are we doing that? And what is it that we want them to have? What kind of legacy do we want to pass on? And most of us are not real conscious about that, let alone the money. I meet a lot of people, 60s and 70s, don't even have any kind of estate plan. Unfortunately, most estate plans do end up dividing people. There was one family my friend Lee was working with, where the grandfather was 93, and he said he overheard one of the kids saying, "Damn, Granddad made it through another flu season," and because all the kids knew how much they were going to inherit when he died. And so they're waiting for him to die. So what you want to do is set it up so he calls it the Anti-Menendez Brothers Fund. For those of you that don't know what that means, there was a famous killing in the United States where these 2 boys killed their parents to get their inheritance, the Menendez brothers. But the idea being that we want to be conscious about money, and really strongly encourage you to put your attention on it, look at your beliefs about it, and don't let that, don't be stuck. There's so much abundance to be had. It's an unlimited wealth. We're not going to do this because we don't have time, but one of my seminars, when I sometimes do money, we'll get 100 people standing up on a line, and we'll take $100, and we'll say, okay, here's $100. Looks like it's limited, but it's not. It's only limited when it's not circulating. So I would say, here's $100, and give them $100, for a hug. So they would give them $100 for a hug, and they would just keep turning, give you $100 for a hug, give you $100 for a hug, and the money circulates, it comes all the way back, and now we created 100 hugs with $100. But when you hoard it and don't circulate it, and when you invest it, you're circulating it. So a lot to know about the world of money. And there's a lot of wonderful seminars out there. Harv Ecker's seminar on, what's he call it? Millionaire Mindset. There's a number of other people doing those kind of consciousness around money seminars. Would strongly encourage you to add that into your curriculum sometime in the next several years. All right, enough said about that. Now, one of the main things that stops people from manifesting their vision is they don't share their vision with enough people. And last night, we ended up with that exercise where you shared your vision, and as a result of it, you said, oh, now it feels more real, now it feels more believable, now it feels possible, now I'm excited about it, other people want to support me in doing it, and so forth. So putting your vision out there is an important thing. And the more you can share that with people, the better. And you'll find people that want to support that and want to get together with you, want to do it too. I mean, I must have had 40 of you come up here and say, I want to do what you're doing. You know, and I've got a vision to share that with the world. And sometime in the next 18 months, we'll probably do a train the trainers program of some kind. I'm not sure when that'll happen or what it'll look like exactly, but a number of you want to bring this into colleges and high schools and corporations and so forth. So we'll keep moving to support you and those of you who want to do that. So my vision is ultimately to transform the entire school system in America and eventually around the world. You know, I was a founding member of the National Council for Self-Esteem, which continues to this day to have conferences and work with people to teach them how to bring some of these kinds of things into the classroom. And what we found, though, is very interesting. We get more reception for that work in other countries. Great Britain, much more receptive to this, all through Europe, Asia. So America seems to be the more difficult place. We have a lot of very conservative kind of thoughts about education right now. But nevertheless, we're not giving up. So, you know, you put out that vision, and other people come and say, I want to do that, I'll help you, I'll help you. So make sure you share your vision. You can put it on your website. You can have a little piece of paper. You can hand out a one sheet to people. Whenever you give a speech, share with people what your vision is. And you'll be surprised. Like Hale said, things will just flow into your life. It gets easier and easier and easier just by being you and putting out who and what you're about. So, one of the strategies for developing unusual clarity for the future is to develop what we call a personal master plan for your life. Now, I want to make a distinction here because based on what Hale said about letting go, not trying to control things, you know, we're still going to set goals. We're still going to have strategic plans. I mean, Hale has a plan for the unfoldment of his business. So, you know, he's not just sitting there waiting for things to drop out of the sky. And yet, at the same time, when you create the intention, if you're really purely not blocking, you'll find most of the things you want will just flow into your life. And we'll talk a little about that, how that works. But the personal master plan is an extension of what we started yesterday with the life purpose and the vision exercise. And so we have now a vision for these 7 areas of your life. And what we want to do then is turn it from being this large, grandiose vision to now some specific objectives that we can achieve in those 7 areas. And so we looked at the 7 goal areas and came up with some, most of you like dot points, things you want. I want a house on the ocean, or I want to, you know, run seminars for kids, or whatever it might be. Now we want to start making that more specific. So you've written down, if you haven't, what you might want to do is take those dot points and expand them out into paragraphs. You know, a house on the ocean. The more detailed you can get, the better. What color carpets does it have? Does it have a quadraphonic sound system in every room? Is there a pool? Is there a tennis court? What ocean is it? You know, the more specific we can get in that detail about what you want. And again, don't worry about whether you think it's possible. Just at this stage, don't even worry about, but just focus on having it exactly the way you want it. This will work miracles in your life, but you have to be willing to be clear. Remember, clarity is power. So once you've written your detailed vision statement, what you want to do is read it every day. Why? Because it brings your focus back. I wrote a book called The Power of Focus, What you focus on is what you get. And the more you focus on it, the more it brings your attention to it, the more it sends out, as we'll talk a little later, it actually sends out brain waves, just like your cellular telephone sends out wireless telephone messages. It's like sending a massive email to the universe. And those people, you know, you've all received spam, right? Sometimes it's stuff we want. You know, I mean, I get a lot of email. Most of it I'm not interested in, but occasionally there's a book or a seminar or something, and I was on somebody's list and they sent out 50,000 emails, and I end up getting value. So if you're putting out into the universe what it is you want, what it is your passion is, what it is your vision is, those people that are wanting to do that will vibrate in resonance with it, and they'll come over. And it won't be everybody. Some of you musicians know that if you take two pianos and put them in a room, and you play a C chord on one piano, the strings on the other piano that correspond to that chord will vibrate. The other strings won't. Okay? And so people that are lined up to do or need or have or participate in whatever you're about will feel that vibration and they will come over. Law of attraction, law of vibration. And those that won't. I mean, I don't expect everyone that we send out a brochure to take this seminar. But those of you that felt, oh, this feels right, vibrate with that, you know, whatever, you show up. So, step 5 is we're going to start now taking our vision and turning it into specific goals and objectives. And by that, we mean measurable. And this is a form we developed when we did the Power of Focus book. And I believe this form is also available as a download on the Success Principles website, the Success Principles, www.thesuccessprinciples.com. And there's a larger version of this in the back of the book. That this is a little bit shrunk down, but you can duplicate it. No problem, just batteries. You can duplicate it. And what we ask you to do is to use this for a 12-week period, like 3 months, and you've got your goals over here in those 7 areas on the left-hand side of the page. And then each week, at a minimum, I'm going to recommend more for you guys. You're in the advanced track here because you're taking a seminar. But at a minimum, you pick 3 specific action steps you could do that week that will forward your goals. And you write them down. And you'll notice up there in the top in little letters on the right, it says focusing partner. So I'm going to recommend before you leave here, and you can start thinking about this today, and you can start negotiating with people. And then on Saturday, we will actually have a practice mastermind group. But I'd like you to leave here with a mastermind alliance of about 6 people, 3 sets of pairs. And then in that group, one of those people would be what we call a focusing partner or an accountability partner. Because you all know that if the IRS or whatever the tax revenue organization is in the country you come from, here in the United States, it's the Internal Revenue Service, if they said send in your money anytime, we'd just never get around to it. But when they say send it in by April 15th, what do? Somewhere around April 1st, we get busy. We take out our records and we call H&R Block or we see our accountant or whatever, and we get it done because we know there's a consequence for not getting it done by April 15th. It's called penalties, pay interest. And if you do it for too long, it could be called jail. So the reality is we know that we're held accountable to that. So what we want is to have a process in our life that will hold us accountable. Now, for some of you, that's called a coach. For some of you, it's called your spouse. For some of you, it's called your financial consultant to hold you accountable to making sure your tax records and all those things go in on time. I'm going to recommend that you have an accountability partner that you talk to a minimum of once a week. And you set a time for that. And it's a consistent time except when there needs to be exceptions, like vacations and if you were here taking a seminar or whatever. And you get on the phone for about a half hour. Doesn't always have to take that long. And then you go through your goals for the week. You commit to them. They know what they are. Sometimes you could fax them over to them, or you could email them to them, or you could just auditorily record them. So that the next time you get on the phone, you start with, hi, how you doing? You can do an invocation, call in some sort of spiritual support. And then, how'd you do? And see, the neat thing is, if I know I have to talk to Peggy on Thursday morning at 8 o'clock about what I did the past week, Wednesday I get real busy. because I don't want to have to tell her I didn't do any of it. See, and if there wasn't a Peggy in my life that I was being held accountable to, I can just keep sliding from week to week to week and never do it at all. Okay? So it's a very simple but very powerful tool. Every one of us has areas of our life where we know we can't be held, where we know that we're not trustworthy. For some of us, it's around food. For some of us, it's around alcohol. For some of us, it's around exercise. For some of us, it's around stretching. For some of us, it's around taking our vitamins. For some of us, it's around our relationship to money and being responsible and saving and investing and earning. And some of it's around going out there and making presentations to people because we get nervous and scared. But we have to, in those areas where we're not trustworthy, it's okay to have a crutch. If you break your leg skiing, as I did 5, 6, 7 years ago, whenever it was, in Beaver Creek, Colorado, I could not walk without support for that leg. I had a brace, I had crutches, and those lasted for probably, 3, 4 months before I could walk on my leg without support. And so it's okay to need support in areas where you don't have built up internal strength. And that can be a coach, a mentor, a partner. For me, I sometimes forget to drink water. So I have a staff person here every hour says, drink your water. And I got another surrogate mother sitting back there saying, drink your water. And when I'm at home, my assistant is told to come over every hour and tell me, drink your water. And it's an area where I get my water. And maybe someday I'll notice I'm thirsty and I'll drink on my own. But most of the time, I get so zoned out into my work, I forget. So it's an area where I've built in support. Does that make sense? Okay, so you can do that. Drink, thank you. I had some on the break, but thank you for asking. I see a whole bunch of people going like this now. It's cool. All righty. So if I have these 7 areas, and if I have goals within those areas, and then I ask myself, if I want to be here by June 15th of 2006, what would I have to do by May 15th, by April 15th, by March 15th, and so forth? It starts to back off until I know what I have to do. When I was in college, how many of you did this? You took all your books that you had to read, you added up all the number of pages you had to read, divided it by the number of days in a semester, and knew that's how many pages you had to read a day. Did any of you do that? Yeah. Only the smart ones. No, I'm teasing. But the point being, that's a very powerful strategy for being clear about what you're accountable for. And a lot of us didn't do that, so a couple weeks before exams, we're up 24 hours a day and taking no-dos and whatever it was we did. But so it's very useful to divide up whatever it is you're supposed to do into chunks and then figure out where am I going to put that in my calendar. Because as I said before, you got to write it down. One of the greatest revelations we've ever made in my office, in my work, in my family, and with me is that if we get it on the calendar, it's likely to occur. And then we have people hold themselves accountable to the calendar. And so people will come in sometimes and say, okay, I'll do so-and-so. And I say, well, write it down. I want to see you write it down. Then when it gets written down, I trust it's going to happen. So you can do that for yourself. How many of you currently use some kind of time management system? Good. And it's one thing to have to-do lists. It's another thing to have a schedule. The schedule is where the rubber meets the road. And the other thing is to schedule accurately your day. So you don't just go dentist 10 o'clock, appointment 11 o'clock, and forget that it takes 15 minutes to drive to the dentist. And then all of a sudden you're late. So you got to build the 15 minutes in for the driving time. There's a lot of wonderful courses out there. Stephen Covey teaches them through the Franklin Covey group. There's a number of people now. I've seen some on the internet. Some S graduates, landmark graduates that are doing something about taking charge of your life. It's a good program. But you want to make sure you have some way to get this stuff on a calendar and then move forward. And then if you've got it on the calendar and you've committed it to another person, then what happens is you're pretty much going to be home free as long as you keep the commitment, stay in that relationship. A mastermind group is just more of them together. Instead of 2, it's 5, 6. I wouldn't go much bigger than 6. And I recommend you create a mastermind group. And I'm going to suggest that on the next breaks, lunch, afternoon, tonight, tomorrow, lunch again, etc., start negotiating with some people. If you can do it where people live in the same city, you can actually get together physically every once in a while, or if you're regionally, and maybe you get together once a quarter where you actually spend a day together. The rest of the time, do it by phone. My mastermind group has a person in San Diego, a person in, two people in Utah, one in Malibu, myself, and another one up in San Jose. And we get together by phone once a month in the morning from about 6:30 to 8:30, because we all have like 9 to 5 kind of commitments. And then we get together quarterly for a day in Malibu at one of the people's homes. It's the most centrally located place. So start thinking about who you'd like to have in your group. And you won't get all your first choices, because there are certain people, 10 people might want them in the same group. But I want you to leave here with that group intact. And on Saturday, we will get together in a group of 6. If you have not yet formed one by then, we'll form one with the people who are not yet in groups, so you won't get left out. But I want you to have some choice about it, so you can start thinking about who you might want to be in that group with. And it can be done by telephone, it can be done in person, it can be done by a combination of the two. It would make sense not to have someone in India and someone in Denmark in the same group, because the time zones are so different. But we have had people pull that kind of stuff off. But I would encourage you to make it geographically simple. Okay? All right, let's keep going here. Another reason visions don't become realized is they're not turned into specific goals and objectives. So we know that one reason is they're not shared. The second reason that most people don't manifest their goals is they don't turn the vision into specific objectives. I want to own this house. Well, what specific steps are required? Sometimes you don't know. I was doing a radio interview, the TV interview rather, in Texas on Dallas Morning Show. And my person doing my makeup, I asked her, as I always do, what's your dream? What's your vision? What do you want to do in life? And she said, well, I'd love to own my own salon. I said, great. What are you doing to make that happen? She said, nothing. And I said, why not? This is your dream. This is what you want. Why aren't you doing it? She said, I don't know what to do. I said, well, who do you think knows? She said, well, people that already have salons. I said, well, great. Ask one of them out for breakfast and ask them what they had to do to get it. She said, you could do that? And I said, yes, you can. Remember, we didn't want to have a best-selling book. We didn't know how to do that. What do? We called up 6 or 7 best-selling authors and asked them if they'd spend an hour on the phone with us, and they did. Every one of them. Big names. And they were willing to tell us. And so we got a list of things to do. Then we bought a book called 1001 Ways to Market Your Book for authors and publishers, something like that, by John Kramer, Kremer, if any of you are interested. And we went through and we made a Post-it out of every one of the 1001 ways. So we had 1001 Post-its on the wall, okay? Little tiny yellow ones. And then every time we did one, we'd take it off. We did that till they were all gone. It was a 2.5-year process. It took us 2.5 years to do all that. But that book was on the bestseller list for 3 years because we did the program. Remember, Tony Robbins says success leaves clues. Success leaves clues. Somebody's probably already done what you want to do. Ask them how they did it. Peggy has a yoga. She got 2 yoga DVDs. Well, how did she do that? If that's something you want to do, go ask her. You know, we rented a studio, we got a videographer, we choreographed it, we got 15 people to put on red leotard, whatever it was you did, that's what you do. And you'd be surprised, most people, not all, most people will be willing to tell you. So if you don't know how to do it, then you've got to go and find out someone who's already done it. Now, occasionally there's something you want to do nobody's done. Put a man on the moon the first time, no one ever did it. Then it's called lots of experiments. Okay? We blew up a lot of monkeys and a few people getting there. But we got there. We made a lot of mistakes. When I did my first seminar, we did the total truth process on Sunday afternoon of a 2.5-day weekend workshop. And everyone left like, We realized, move it to Saturday. The day of recovery, whatever. But you'll make some mistakes, and that's okay. It's on course, off course, on course, off course, and eventually you'll get to where you want to go. So give yourself permission to explore. Remember, I'm not lost, I'm just exploring, Janice song. All right. So one of the major pieces of research that's being done now on goal setting is indicating that almost all high achievers are high-level goal setters. I mean, there was a quote by Pablo Picasso, an artist. He talked about you have to have goals, you have to have a strategy, you have to have a plan. I don't remember the number, maybe some of you do, but Pablo Picasso did something like what? 50,000 pieces of art, some unbelievable number. And he would basically buy a warehouse, have his staff fill it with all kinds of materials, clay, he made plates and cups and dishes and all kinds of things, and then and sculptures and canvases, and he would go in, he would just, for 2 or 3 months, he'd just fill everything up. Then he'd say, well, go sell that, find me another warehouse, and they'd fill that up with stuff. And he'd just go in there and produce. It wasn't just like, oh, I think I'll paint today. He had a plan. He became probably one of the greatest known names in art in the world, and very wealthy and very influential in the art world. Here's a guy, John Goddard, who you may have read about in my first Chicken Soup for the Soul book, who set 127 goals at the age of 15. And these are not minor goals. I'm just going to read you a few of them. Climb Mount Everest, climb Mount Kilimanjaro, climb the Matterhorn, climb Mount Rainier, Mount Fuji, Mount Vesuvius, Mount Baldy, explore the Okefenokee Swamp, visit the North Pole, the Great Wall of China, the Panama and Suez Canals, Easter Island, Vatican City, the Eiffel Tower, the Tower of London, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, the Sacred Wall of Chichen Itza in Mexico, he wanted to catch like lobsters, abalones, all different kinds of fish. He wanted to be able to put out a candle with a .22 rifle at 100 feet. He wanted to teach a college course, watch a cremation ceremony in Bali, own a horse, chimpanzee, cheetah, ocelot, and coyote. Notice he says he's owned everything but the chimp or the cheetah. Become familiar with all the compositions of Bach, Beethoven, Debussy, Ibert, Mendelssohn, Lalo, Rimsky-Korsakov, Respighi, Liszt, Rachmaninoff, Stravinsky, Tosh, Tchaikovsky, and Verdi. Knows he's checked that one off. Compose music, play Clair de Lune on the piano, watch a firewalking ceremony, travel through the Grand Canyon on foot and by boat, circumnavigate the globe. He's done that 4 times. Why did he do that? At the age of 15, he said, you know what happened? All these people would come to my dad's for dinner. His dad was a businessman. He was a very smart networker. Every Sunday night, he would invite a couple business people over for a family dinner. That's how he built his business. And he said, part of the conversation was always these people saying, I wish I had. Wish I'd taken that year off between college and graduate school and traveled around the world. Wish I'd pursued that dream to become a National Geographic photographer. Wish I'd gone to Kenya and gone on that safari, but now I'm too old or whatever. And he said, I didn't want to grow up and say, I wish I had. He said, so I went to my room one Sunday night and I wrote 127 goals. Got published by Life magazine when he was 16. Someone sent it in. They thought it was a cool idea. They came back 15 years later to see how he was doing. They published another article. That's where I learned about him. Called him up, interviewed him, wrote his story. And now I've gone on hikes with him, and he's the real Indiana Jones. This guy is an amazing being. His house looks like one of those houses, where there's shrunken heads and masks and, all kinds of spears and things from all the cultures around the world. He started out, he wanted to find the source of the Nile River and then take a boat all the way down, and he did that. Got malaria, still has like some malarial symptoms that, sometimes it's hard to get it totally out of your body. But it's an amazing guy. He's in his 70s, I think he's 74 or 5. He's achieved 115 of the 127 goals. He's only given up on 2. The first one was to star in a Tarzan movie. And the other one was to go to the moon. He originally wanted to go to the moon. He's flown every aircraft that the Navy or the Air Force has ever had. At 74, his vital statistics are better than all the guys at Top Gun and Miramar in terms of the amount of push-ups, blood pressure, all that kind of stuff. Amazing being. But see, you can be equally amazing. Why is he amazing? Because he decided to do that stuff and he did it. We look up there and go, wow, someone that did all that must be pretty amazing. Well, the reason he's amazing is because he did all that. You can do it too. But you have to decide what you want. That's why that list of 101 goals. And you can constantly add to it. I did that when I was 47. I've achieved about 53 of the 101 goals. A couple of them I achieved and went, gee, why did I want to do that? But I did them. One was to go to the Grand Ole Opry, which I now call country music played by geriatrics for geriatrics. However, on an occasion, you'll find somebody young singing, like Jana got to play at the Grand Ole Opry. It was a big goal for her, right? One of Jana's goals was to play Carnegie Hall. Just accomplished that last year, didn't you? Yeah. But the point is, whatever the goals are, and if you tell people what your goals are, I actually have mine printed up. I didn't bring it to this training, I don't know why, but I often hand it out to people. But I was sharing this exact talk, or this little piece of it at a conference, and mentioned that one of my goals was to go to the Country Music Awards. And the guy came up later and he said, you know, I'm the person who puts on the Country Music Awards. I'll get you a backstage pass. It'll be in New York next year for the first time ever. It's always been in Nashville, but we're trying to take the image out of the fact that it's only, you know, the South and all that, and it's a national thing. And he said, we'll get you backstage. You can meet all the people, come to the after party. He says, because I'm the event planner who puts that together. Now, if I hadn't said that, no one would know. Remember, share your vision, other people can help you. All right, so you got the idea. He says, to dare is to do, to fear is to fail. It's one of John Goddard's quotes. Just do it. I had on my list I wanted to go in a hot air balloon. One time I'm in Colorado and I hear this shh sound outside our hotel room about 6:30 in the morning. I look out, there's about 9 people blowing up these hot air balloons. I said, see you, honey. Because it was on my goal list. If it hadn't been on my goal list, I probably wouldn't have been, you know, hey, I get to check that one off today. All right. So we're going to take a few moments here to set measurable goals for each aspect of your vision, and they need to be written down. Goals need to be written down. There's actually research that if you just write your goals down instead of think them, if you just write them down, there's a 200% greater chance that you'll achieve them. Okay? That's good odds. If you just write them down, put them in a drawer, and don't look at them for the rest of the year. Bob Harris, who's the team captain, told me once he came out of one of my trainings, wrote down all his goals, put them in a drawer, forgot to look at them, just forgot. At the end of the year, open the drawer, every one of them had been achieved, simply from writing them down. Now, we can accelerate that even more by doing this other stuff, but writing them down is critical. We define an objective as something I want, which is measurable by me and someone else. And the someone else is important. I want to lose weight. Well, how would I know if Mark lost weight? I don't know. But if Mark says, I will weigh 125 by this date, and I show up and say, stand on the scale, and he weighs 130, then he didn't make his goal. It's measurable. But if he says, I just want to lose weight, even if he says, I want to lose 25 pounds, I can't measure that. How do I know if he's lost 25 pounds? But if he says, how much by when? I will weigh a certain amount by this date. I will have a 4,000 square foot house on the ocean. Or I will have 65 employees, or we'll have a seminar with 250 people in it. And what happens, we can measure that. So it needs to be measurable. A lot of times people say, I want to improve my relationship with my spouse. What's that mean? Well, we're going to spend an hour every week, knee to knee, eye to eye, talking about the kind of things we've been talking about here in this seminar, feelings and needs and wants and fears and so forth, as opposed to just watching I Love Lucy reruns. Okay? Or we're going to go dancing every week for a minimum of 2 hours. Or we're going to go for a hike, or we're going to take 4 3-day vacations by this date. Someone else could say, whoop, they took 3-day vacations. There it is on their calendar. They went. It's got to be measurable. And by measurable, we mean in space and time. And the key words are how much by when. A large workshop, can't measure that. Write a book, can't measure that. 100-page book, we can measure. My book will be published. What does that mean? Self-published, 100 boxes in the garage, major publisher. In other words, be very specific. Because otherwise, your brain won't know what to do. The brain will solve any problem you give it as long as you give it the problem in a way that it can understand the measurability of it. If I say a house on the ocean, the brain's sitting there going, which ocean? It's like, you want that with fries or not? Right? All right, so we have to be specific. So here's a person who says, I'd like a winter home. What we want to say is, I will own a 2-bedroom beachfront villa on the west coast of Maui, Hawaii by January 1st, 2007, noon. Why do we put noon? We put noon so the person that's going to be able to measure this as your accountability partner knows when to show up and see if you got it. Okay? If we say by the end of the year, what does that mean? 12 a.m., midnight, January 31st? People say by December. Well, what, December 1st, 5th, 6th, 8th, 10th, what time? Sounds picky, but it's important. I'd like to make a difference in education in Mexico. Well, that's nice. I will conduct a 1-day self-esteem workshop for a minimum of 30 teachers in Oaxaca, Mexico by 5 p.m., January 30th, 2006. Now we've got an objective or a goal. I'd like to increase my income. I will earn $250,000 by 5 p.m., December 31st, 2006. Like to reduce staff turnover. We will reduce staff turnover to 15% a year by a certain date. So you getting the idea? Very, very specific. Like to spend more time with my wife. Take 3 long weekend vacations, 1 2-week vacation with my wife by December 30th, 2005 at 5 p.m. Going to lose weight and get fit. I will weigh 190 pounds, complete a 10K run by October 31st, 2005. Show up in the gym with Chaz by 5:30 a.m. on...
Did you?
No, I did, but I'll tell you what I did do. I did actually work out in my room this morning, which is like the next step for me. So I go back to the gap. It's more than I've been doing. So I did about 30 push-ups, did 2 reps of that, did some sit-ups, did some yoga stretching, did my bounce and shake for about 10 minutes. It felt really righteous. So we're moving in the right direction.
To resume listening to this course on audio CD, please go to CD number 27.
So I want to take sharing for just a minute. We don't need the mic. You're just going to yell it out. What do you notice happening as you're starting to write these goals? What's occurring inside of you?
A whole lot of energy.
Whole lot of energy for you, okay.
I'm living the goal.
You feel like you're living the goals?
Tension,
Tension. What kind of tension?
tension to maybe can't get it done, maybe can get it done.
Okay, so some thoughts are coming up. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. What else are you noticing the inner tendency of the mind to do right now?
Tension to get started.
Tension to get started?
Get closer.
What? Anticipation.
Excitement.
Starting to see steps.
Excitement.
Okay.
Feel the need to get started.
Feel the need to get started.
Excitement.
Excitement.
See it.
You can see it.
It's like warfare, battling back and forth with myself.
Warfare battle. Let's talk a little more about that because this is important. What kind of warfare going on in there?
Like getting excited about an idea and then arguing against it.
Okay. Getting excited about an idea, but then arguing against it. How many of the rest of you have noticed that when you start to write these down, not only does the excitement and the clarity and all that come up, but there's some negative stuff that comes up too. Now let's talk about that negative stuff for a minute, because that negative stuff can sabotage you. If you understand it, it's like, how many of you women have given birth in this room? Can I see? How many of you took like a Lamaze or one of those classes? What's the other big one? Bradley method? Yeah, it's helpful to know that when you're going to go through the birth process, that there's stages. You know, one of the stages is you just want to kill your husband, run out of the room, and shoot everybody. And but usually when that's happening, if you're training, you know you're real close. Okay, and so if you know that, it allows you to keep going and not give up. Now, the same is true here. If you know what to expect when you start to set these goals and they show up, you don't have to be sabotaged by it. So one thing we found was thoughts come up about why I can't do it and so forth. What else did you notice inside that comes up that's negative or could sabotage you or stop you? Yes?
You set goals before and you didn't do them. It's like that.
So you heard a voice, oh, you've done this before and you didn't do them, so what's the point of this? Yeah.
I don't want to set myself up for failure.
I don't want to set myself up for failure. So how do you avoid that when you're doing this? How could you avoid setting yourself up for failure? What would be one of the ways you could do that?
Make sure that your goals are specific enough so that
So make sure they're...
they're attainable. That your goals are
Okay, my question is the opposite of that. You're right, the way you understood the question, but the question is, what is a way that you could avoid this tension, avoid this sense of, what? Okay, just like quit, I'm not going to do this, that would be one way. What else could you do? Very good. Set more realistic goals. What would be 2 ways you could make them more realistic? You could make downsize it. You could say, well, I won't do a 6,000 square foot house, I'll do a 3,000 square foot house. I'll write down 3,000 square foot. What? Well, that would be a positive thing you could do. I'm looking at the negative thing you could do that actually gets in the way of you achieving what you want. So what's another thing? So one thing we can do, we can make the goal smaller. And by making it smaller, it feels more realistic, and then it takes away the tension, but it also what? Takes away the dream. Okay? Going to be realistic now instead of going for what I really want. What's another way we could make it more realistic? Push it off farther into the future. Yeah, make the time farther out. So instead of saying I'll have it by June of 2006, I'll say, well, let's make it 2008. That feels safer, right? I really want it by 2006, but 2008 would be safer, okay? So one of the things we do is we hear considerations. We call those considerations in our head, all the little thoughts that come up, I can't do that. Oh my God, I'd have to borrow money from my mom. I don't want to borrow money from my mom. I hate asking my mom for anything, So we start getting that stuff coming up. And so here's my goal at the far end, and here's the here and now. And as soon as I commit to that goal, and see, writing it down is a commitment, right? Before it's just that, it's a vague intention, it's out there, it's kind of like, yeah, someday I'll take the kid to Disneyland. No, I'll take you Wednesday night. Now I've got a commitment. As soon as we do that, considerations are going to show up. Your mind is going to start saying, wait a second, we can't do that. This is nice. We're here in a seminar. I got to go home. I got a week's work piled up back there. You know, I got kids to feed and blah, blah, blah. So all that's going to happen. The other thing that comes up is fears. Didn't even notice you started to get a little scared about maybe some of the things you'd have to do? Yeah. And the third thing is what we call the awareness of roadblocks. Oh yeah, it's easy for me to sit here and say I'll have a big home on the ocean, but I don't have any money. And in fact, my partner is allergic to sea salt. You know? She wants to live in the mountains. I want to start a company. I want to take our life savings and start a company. My partner wants to save it all up and go to Europe. You know, this is a roadblock. I want to have a business out of my home, but my suburb is not zoned for that. That's a roadblock, you know? I want to run a marathon, but I've only got one leg. That's a roadblock. It's doable. People do it. But the point is, as soon as you start setting the goals, all these things are going to start to show up. Now, the key is this. Just let them show up, and then what are you going to do based on Hale's work? Release them, okay? They're just part of the process. They're just part of the process. Unfortunately, most people, this stuff starts to come up, and they see it as a big stop sign. It says, stop. Who are you kidding? No way. This is silly. And you don't do anything. So I just want you to know, it's one of the little pitfalls, and some of you started to experience. Some of you are having just the opposite. Oh, this is exciting. This seems more realistic. Wow, I really could do this. That's fine. But for those that are having the negative come up, that's just part of the process. Don't let it stop you. See, if you do, then that's another way of you'll never manifest your vision. But if you understand it, you know it's coming, then you don't have to let it stop you. Okay, so having said that, Terry, you want to share something?
Well, I just have a question. I mean, you just brought up a point.
Let's wait for the mic here, just so everyone can hear it.
It's Terry. I just have a question. I mean, you brought up a point about, you know, you set this goal and you feel okay with it. And my first thing that I wrote down was between now and the end of the year, you make 125,000. My first thought in my head was 250. I thought, that's not realistic.
So you made it smaller, yeah.
So, you know, just based on what's going on in my own life right now, you know, so again, setting that limitation on myself right out of the get-go. I mean, if you're not feeling a little bit apprehensive about your goal, or you may be limiting yourself in your goal right off the get-go is my question.
If you're not feeling what?
Well, if you don't have a little bit, I mean, if you set your goal somewhat higher, you know, we're talking about daring to dream and go for it. Mm-hmm. You know, so if you set your goal a little bit higher, maybe it's just, you know, if you can jump 10 feet, you know, maybe the goal's at 12 feet. So maybe it should be at 12 feet, even though it's, you know, in your mind you're setting it at 10. So, well, I can do that. You know, so are we limiting ourselves if we're not feeling a little bit apprehension about our goal?
Well, I always tell people, when you get up in the morning, you start moving toward your goals, if there's not a little bit of discomfort, you probably didn't set the goal high enough. You don't want to set it so high that you freeze yourself.
Right. Okay, that's the question.
You know, for someone that, you know, has been like in solitary confinement for the last 5 years, to come out and face all of us is probably too big a leap, you know. But we also want them to not just stay in solitary confinement in their little reclusive hole for the rest of their life. So they're going to have to do something which just feels a little uncomfortable, maybe go talk to two people. So you want to be stretching. And stretching means you're outside of your comfort zone. That's where the growth occurs, okay? And it's good to do that. But it's also clearly important that you don't create it so ridiculously high that you just think it's impossible, or that you set yourself up to feel so scared you can't move. So it's finding that balance point there. Otherwise, you're deadly dull, or you're like freaking yourself out. Okay, does that answer it?
Yep. Perfect.
Okay, good. Thank you. Terry? Marsala first, and then you, and then Adolfo, and then we're going to go back to writing our goals for a few more minutes.
Just to finish, Marsala, everybody, just to mention, kind of finish what Terry was saying. Can you mention, Jack, about, like, say you set a goal, you don't reach it, you don't beat yourself up, but you do look at how far you've stretched to get there, and...
Yeah, well, that's what the living in the gap was about, what we talked about the other day, the idea that we, you know, actual one, actual two, and the ideal.
Right.
And remember, the way you move toward the ideal is you set goals that move you toward the ideal. That's what we're doing now. You have an ideal vision of what you want your life to look like in all those arenas. Now we're going to set specific goals that create momentum and movement toward that. Does this mean every one of those goals you said you're going to achieve? Probably not. There are people who do. You'll get most of them. Some of them you'll surpass. And a few you might not get right now, but you'll eventually get. It's a movement. The thing we're looking for is movement toward and getting us unstuck and moving. However, I've had people come out of here with 17 to 50 goals and get them all in the time frame they wanted. And I've had other people come out and have 10 goals and get 8 of them, and 2 of them they're still working on. So it depends when you leave here how much attention you put on this, how much effort you extend, how much you release and don't get yourself stuck. You know, all these things we're teaching you are part of the process. But the main thing is, if you don't reach your goal, you ask yourself 2 questions. Is there something I could have done that I didn't? Is there something I need to know that I don't? Okay. Am I still committed to this goal? And what sort resources or support or new goals do I need to set or whatever it might be? There might be new skills I thought I didn't need and I do, you know, whatever. And then you make that part of your goal and you reset the deadline. So when you're doing your mastermind groups and when you're doing your accountability stuff, if someone doesn't reach their goal, you don't beat them up for it. You say, well, that's still important to you. Okay, so what needs to happen to make it occur? You know, and usually you know. And if not, then it's you go, well, who might know? And you go ask. Does that make sense? But it's always supporting ourselves for what we did do, focusing on that, and then continuing to move forward. All right, good point. Thank you, Marcella. And then Judy?
One of the goals that I've got is to start and continue like the Hour of Power deal. So it's going to be something daily for lifetime, probably.
Uh-huh.
How do you write that? Do you do something like put timelines for checking in?
Yeah, very important question. How do you do something like if you want to have a daily discipline for the rest of your life, if you say I'm going to do something every day, you only have to miss 1 day and you failed.
Right.
Okay? So what I'll often do is give myself like 6 out of 7 days I will do this up until a certain date, you know, like 6 months out, let's say. And then I check in with myself, applaud myself for doing a good job and reset the goal for out again. That way I get to keep winning. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. Do you all know what? Thank you. The Hour of Power is something that's in my book. It's simply every day, 20 minutes of meditation, 20 minutes of exercise, and 20 minutes of reading. A guy named Azim Jamal up in Canada came up with the term and the concept, and I met him, liked it, and asked him if I could put it in my book, and he said yes, and I actually use it in my own life. Most of the time I do it, okay? It's very powerful. If you read, exercise, and meditate every day, you're going to be happier, healthier, and wealthier, no question.
I will have a passive income of 30,000 euros per month by October 31st, 2005, and a total of 250,000 euros for taxable for 2005. For overall.
Read it one more time.
I will have a passive income of 30,000 euros per month by October 31st, 2005, and a total of 250,000 euros taxable income for 2005. Complete.
Okay, that works. Very good, thank you. Give him a hand. Larry?
My name's Larry Tracy.
Hang on
Medina,
one second.
Ohio.
I'm hearing music from something. I don't know if it's the house. You're working on it? Okay, good. Tomas's spirit has filled the room.
To establish the Youth for Youth program in over 5,000 schools worldwide at no cost by September 1st of 2010.
What will to have established? What does that mean?
The program is active and running in that particular school.
Okay.
They've got the foundation laid, they've got the training, they're doing it, and they're on their own, and they're successful at it.
All right, good. Thank you. Stephanie?
Hello, I'm Stephanie, and I will be winning the 2006 Body for Life Championship.
By when?
In 2006.
Well, by when in 2006?
Oh, I don't know when they name it.
Well,
I will.
by December 31st
By
to be
December
safe.
31st, 11:59 p.m., 2006.
Okay, very good. You want to have a date, though. You can call them and find out, and then you can just put it in there. All right, good. Thank you. Yes. Tell us your name.
Hi, I'm Jillian. I will speak at 3 different locations on the 5th, the 12th, and the 21st of November on living a wonderful marriage God's way.
What year?
2005.
Okay. You could simplify that by saying by 2000, by whatever the last date was, I will have delivered 3 speeches on. But that's fine if you want to keep the specific dates, just schedule them. Okay, very good. Oops, sorry.
I will take 1 day off a week from Gymboree, which is my current business, to use as focus day to create my dream of being a national seminar leader.
And when will you do that by?
Beginning this Friday, August 19th.
And how long will you continue that for?
I will do it for at least 6 months.
Okay, and when will that date be that it will end?
I don't know, 6 months out from Friday, August 19th.
Well, let's figure it out. September, October, November,
actually-
December, January,
But
February.
I will do it until I have my first seminar. Until I've created my first series of 6 seminars on parenting.
And when do you want to have those created
And they
by?
will be created by April 30th, 2006.
Okay, now we're cooking.
Yeah, now
All
we're
right.
cooking.
Good. So now we've got a goal and we have a strategy for
Right.
achieving that goal.
Right.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'll own a $395,000 fully paid for 3,800 square foot Rambler in Village on the Green, and that's in Salt Lake City, with a view to the northwest, which is where the lights of the city are, with a Frank Lloyd Wright exterior, 10-foot ceilings, light brown carpets, earth tone, 3-tone paint, master suite with a walk-in shower, fireplace, 3-car garage, granite cabinets, granite kitchen, wood floors by 2 p.m. December 31, 2007.
Notice your response to that level of specificity. See, that was the loudest you applauded anyone who shared their goal. So just be aware of that. That's what that evokes. Clarity is power. Zach?
Mine is I will have finished my business proposal to open up a tattoo shop, come up with the necessary money, learn county health requirements in San Francisco, and enrolled 4 world-class tattoo artists to work for me by August 1st, 2007.
Okay, very good. Have you seen any of these Inkit reality shows that are on television? You ought to watch a few. A lot of stuff you want to avoid. Have any of you seen those tattoo shows on the reality channels? Very interesting, very interesting. Miami Ink, yeah, good. Okay, over here.
On the last break, I had a chance to see the power of sharing your goals and dreams with people. I just mentioned it to someone, and my goal was to license my poetry. And so she was talking to me about a licensing agent and a link where I could find a place that would develop my poetry onto mugs and t-shirts and bookmarks and all those things. And then someone else who was listening, that's in this room, said the other thing you're going to need is an intellectual property attorney. And so I already had 2 good pieces of information that came to me, and so I went ahead and put a note on the bulletin board out there that I need an IAP and a licensing agent, if anyone in the room is one or knows of one.
So read your goal.
I will, by January 15th, 2006, find a licensing agent for my poetry and an international intellectual property attorney.
Where do you live?
Near Charlotte, North Carolina.
Charlotte, North Carolina. Okay. It's not.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, well, I left my information on the board out there.
Okay, you could just get that information. You know what she looks like, so on a break, get that information to her.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Sandy. In the orange, yes, ma'am.
I'm Jen White. I will accept the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay, An Uncanny Woman, by 28th of February 2009, 11 p.m.
So why are you holding yourself back so much? I don't get it. That's great, fabulous. Let's go over here. Yes.
I will receive.
Hold it up.
I will receive $12 million for my tax-exempt group, Creatures Great and Small Incorporated, 501(c), which will be by December 1st, 2005, at 12 p.m. The building is 50,000 square feet, costing $4.5 million, much of it done by Hound Quarters, on 50 acres, which is $1 million, in Graves County, Kentucky.
Okay. Got a lot of work to do between now and then. Yeah. Okay, let's just do two more. You guys are doing great. Yes. Mark. Behind you, Mark.
Thank you, Deb. My name is Mark Rourke, and I've been following my passion since the 7th grade. I've finally written it down. I have to ask. By August 27th, 7:27 p.m., 2007, have secured $27,000 from at least 3 contributors. That money will go for my 4th year extramural funding to do the research I've always wanted to do and pay for my coursework in my 4th year because I don't have the money to do it, and experiential learning. And hopefully as well to inspire Jack to make sure that he follows through with this San Bernardino endowment chair, because that's what I need. That's what I'm looking for. And at any time, Jack, you would like to feel like you want to contribute to my goal, or if anything I can do to help you, let me know.
Now, Mark, great goal. Too many words.
True.
So let's capture it.
A little ad-lib.
That's okay. Let's capture it in a sentence.
Sure.
How can we define that so it's completed? So when you get there, someone else could go, wow, Mark did it.
Maybe I'll read what I wrote. By August 27th, 7/27, have secured $27,000 for my 4th year funding to do research and experiential learning.
Okay, very good. All right, I'm not going to take any more now just because of time, but you're doing good. Now, some of you have more goals to write. Like, we don't have more time right now, but you have the breaks, you have tonight, you have when you go home, whatever. You want to get every aspect of your vision with a measurable goal, okay? And I would also encourage you to have one for your turnaround statement. If you need to have that there, sometimes that works, your life purpose, if there's something there. You can look throughout your book as you get home. Are there any other goals that don't necessarily fall within this vision that you also are committed to that you want to make sure you get on paper? Now, the next step of this, we talked about either or, both and. Make sure that you get rid of any conflicts and know that you can have all of it, okay? It is possible to have things that don't necessarily deny having the other. So think that way. Now, remember, I also said you want to set a goal that's big enough that in the process of achieving it, you become someone worth becoming. So if there's in any way you've held back in terms of what you really want, you might want to reassess those goals, in terms of the considerations, making it half, pushing it out in the future. Really go for what you want, okay? One of the things that I like to encourage people to do is to look at your career, your business, whatever it is you do in that arena, and ask yourself, if I had a goal that would just break me through to the next level, what would that be? This is just an area to look for another possible goal. You may or may not need this. But when I was first starting out as a speaker, I realized that there were friends of mine that were doing something I wasn't doing. They had books and they had audio tapes. And I realized they had an advantage. Number one, they could make more money. But more importantly, they could give a 1-hour talk and people could take home a 6-hour seminar. So they actually gave people more value. And also, it's if you're a speaker and you have audio tapes and books, or now CDs, DVDs, it's a calling card. It is a brochure that someone else pays for. Because you take the book home and share it with your company. They go, "Ooh, Jack's book, we liked it. Let's hire him to come in and do a seminar for our people." Or, "We like that DVD so much, let's make him our keynote speaker." So a breakthrough goal for me was to develop an audio program. And it was really scary. I didn't know how to do it, never done it, and I didn't do it really, really well the first time. But I did it well enough that another company got a copy of it and called me up and said, "We love your material. We don't think you delivered it very well." We're curious. You went into a studio and you read it, which I did. And they said, "Did you have a model?" I said, "Yeah," and I won't mention the other person's name, but I said, "That was my model." They said, "Well, he's kind of deadly dull and boring. And, you picked the bad model." And they said, "We think you'd do better live instead of in a studio. We'd like to take the chance that that's true. We'll put you in front of a studio audience. We'll record you for a day. If it works, we'll sell it." Well, that went on to make me almost $400,000 a year for 5 years in a row. But if I hadn't made that first one, which wasn't perfect, they would have never heard it, never would have gone the next step. So again, it's not about perfection, it's about getting started. And in the process, you will achieve more. So ask yourself, well, I'll just give you another example. When Mark and I decided we wanted to write a best-selling book, that was a breakthrough goal again, something that would take us into best-selling author status. I mean, my speaking fees went from about $3,000 a year to $30,000 a year in less than 2 years because I was now a best-selling New York Times author. And so that was a breakthrough goal. So what would be a breakthrough goal for you? We had a chiropractor take the seminar once, and he said he wanted to be known as the chiropractor of Dallas, Texas. He wanted everyone in Dallas to know what a subluxation was. Subluxation is when your spine's out of alignment and nerves being pinched and all that kind of thing. And he said most people have never heard the word. They don't know what chiropractic can do for them. So he wanted to be like the green grocer, used to be on TV, or Dr. Gupta Sinjay is on CNN, They do these little segments every time. And so he wanted like a little 5-minute radio spot. And that would be a breakthrough goal. So when people would think of chiropractic, they'd think of his name. Well, he went off and did that. And it was a breakthrough goal for him. So you might think about what would be a breakthrough goal for you that would take you to the next level. It might be getting your MBA degree. It might be getting a certain kind of certification. It might be making a DVD of your program, or getting a talk show, or being on local cable access, or becoming president of your professional association, or starting a foundation, or joining a nonprofit group where you could be well known in the community, or starting, I know that for, to do a chiropractic example again, because I've been working with a lot of chiropractic associations the last couple of years as a speaker, and there's a guy by the name of Fabrizio Mancini, who runs Parker Seminars. And it's always been for chiropractors. They get 10,000 chiropractors here in Vegas at the Hilton every year. And they bring in, Wayne Dyer and Susie Orman and Deepak Chopra and me and Mark Victor Hansen and Arnold Schwarzenegger, great keynote speakers. And he decided one year, instead of just limiting it to chiropractors, what if we could open it to everybody in the, what he called alternative medicine field? Holistic medicine, homeopaths, massage therapists, acupuncturists, herbologists, etc. What would that do? First of all, it would establish chiropractic at the forefront of this wedge, okay? And secondly, it would establish him as a leader, not just in the chiropractic world, but in the whole holistic health world. That would be a breakthrough goal for his career and for his profession. So that's the kind of thing we're talking about. So we don't need to do it right now, but I want you to think about that. That could be a homework assignment for you. What would be a breakthrough goal that would take you to a next level? Now, some of you are not in business. Some of you are here, for other intentional purposes. But if you're in business, ask yourself, what would be something that would take you to that next level? Okay, does that make sense? It's a very powerful tool, because what happens is most of us go out, and I use the football analogy. If you can make 3 plays of 4 yards each, you get 12 yards, you get a first down, you can go down the field that way and eventually get a touchdown. But why not come out and throw a 60-yard pass? Saves a lot of effort. You get there faster. So that's what we're looking for, something that would accelerate you to a higher level more quickly. And so it would quantum leap your professional success or the success of your company or your organization or whatever it might be. Okay. We're not going to do this exercise because we're running just a little bit behind here, but you can do it on your own. What I recommend you do is take whatever goal you have that you would consider your main goal, the goal that kind of subsumes all your other goals. Some of the goals that people were sharing here are probably that goal, or your breakthrough goal, and then write it on your business card. This is the one Mark and I had, and then we signed each other's cards. We were joyfully celebrating the sale of 8 million Chicken Soup for the Soul books in 2002. I signed it, he signed it, I signed his. We carried it around in our wallet, and if you open it up, instead of a driver's license, you see the goal. And every time you open it, it reminds you, oh, I've made that goal. It's just a way to keep yourself focused again. You can put it on a banner, put it in your office, put it on your screensaver, but you want that goal in front of you. Now, ultimately, what you want to do is you want to read your goals every day. That's really the way to stay focused. Now, someone said, I've got 5-year goals, 3-year goals, and 1-year goals. Do I read them every day? My point of view would be read your 5-year goals maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks or once a month. Read your 3-year goals maybe once a week, and then your 1-year goals every day. Because your 1-year goals are part of the plan of how do you get to your 5-year goals. And what you'll have to do on your own, you can do it here, do it with a partner. The more you put in here, the more momentum you're going to get. Because there's a tendency when you leave here to get captured by the other real world out there and not get it done. So use your time wisely here. But I would recommend that you look at, if I'm going to be out here 3 years from now, what do I have to do 2 years from now? What do I have to have done 1 year from now? What do I have to have done by next month? What am I going to do next week? Brian Tracy, who many of you know, who's another one of these experts in the whole goal achievement arena, has a wonderful, simple little model. He says, decide what you want to have, figure out 3 things you can do that would move you toward having them, go do those 3 things. As soon as you finish that, write down 3 more things you could do and just keep doing that over and over and over and over, and eventually you're going to get there. Okay? I tend to be a little more systematic to say, if I want to by this date, what would have to happen by this date, but just work it back. Okay? If I want my book done by this date, then I'm going to have all the manuscript finished by this date. I'm going to have the first draft done by this date so people can edit. The edits are going to have to come back by this date. I'm going to need a week to put it in. And just lay it out very clearly. This is my goal for this year, joyfully celebrating the sale of 8 million copies of the Success Principles 2005.
Where are you?
Not quite there yet. What we've done so far is the first half of the year was all spent selling, I think we sold about 250,000 books. And what happens in the book world is what I call the chain letter effect. You've got to get as many books as you can out there, seed the marketplace. That's why you do a book tour, you go to 30 cities. I got 2,500 books and gave them away free. If you've ever read the book The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell, you have to have enough people that are what they call gatekeepers, opinion molders, and get it into their hands so they'll talk about it. And now we're focusing, as soon as this program's over, on what we call large corporate sales, where we'll start selling 10, 15, 20, 5,000, 50,000 books at a time. And I'm working with a guy named Marshall Thurber, who's a friend of mine, who's a network science genius. And what we're really going to attack next are multi-level marketing companies, network marketing companies. And here's a neat little piece of information for you. If you can get into a network and get 5 people that are at the top of that network, you own that network. So if I can find 5 people at Herbalife who are vice presidents, head of big downlines, et cetera, and get them interested in my book, that will be enough to penetrate the entire Herbalife network. If we can do that with Nick Henn and with Melaleuca and USANA and Amway, I don't know what they call it now, there's a new name, whatever it is, that's our next strategy for the rest of the year. Now, we may or may not make that goal, but the point is, we wanted it big enough that it would force us to think big thoughts. Like, how can you sell 1 million books in one day is one of the goals that Mark and I took on. And we did not achieve that, but we came very close to it. But it forced us to think out of the box, because up until J.K. Rowling, no one had done it. And we had the idea first. She pulled it off first. But the point being that it forced us to get big in our ideas. And I'll just tell you what happened real quickly. We talked about the GPS system, And the idea that as soon as you have a thought, it starts sending out waves, and synchronous things start to happen. My wife calls them synchromystical. I love that phrase. Synchromystic events, synchromystical events. So we're at the Book Expo America, and I'm sitting down. We've had this goal. We set it about a month before we went there, and we're visualizing it, and we're talking about it, and we're brainstorming with our staff about it. And I go to the BEA. I sit down on a bus that's going from the Chicago McCormick Center back to the Hyatt or wherever we're staying, and this woman sits down next to me, and she says, "You're Jack Canfield, aren't you?" And I went, "Oh, yeah, I'm cool. She knows who I am." And then I looked down. That was my name tag. And she said, "You're the chicken soup guy." I said, "Yeah." She said, "What do you mark up to?" I said, "Well, we just set a goal to sell 1 million books in one day." She said, "I can help you do that." I said, "Really? Who are you?" She said, "I'm the buyer for the W.H. Smith bookstores." Now, if you know anything about the airports, most of them have a W.H. Smith bookstore. Not all of them, but most of them. And she said, "You know, what you could do is we could have a book signing that would go, and you'd start in all the books. We'd have like you and all your co-authors, not just me, but Lisa Nichols, who did African American Soul, and Patty Aubrey, who you met the other day, and so forth. We'll put you all on the East Coast airports, Boston, Atlanta, New York, JFK, Washington, D.C., Miami, and we'll start in that 6 to 9 period where everyone's doing their business travel, and then we'll fly you over to a little bit further west, maybe like Pittsburgh, St. Louis, whatever. We'll just keep moving you across the country. We'll get an airline partner, maybe 2. We'll get a hotel partner so you guys can all sleep somewhere, and we'll just keep taking you all the way across till we get to San Francisco, and by then we'll be doing the 5 o'clock back business travel." She said, "I bet we could sell 1 million books in one day." She said, "We could do some corporate advertising. We could do, I said, "Cool, why would you want to help us do that?" She said, "Dummy." She actually said, "Dummy." She did. She said, "If I sold 1 million books of one title in one day, you don't think that'd make me look good to my bosses?" I said, "Cool, let's play." So the point is that you will start to have miraculous things occur. You could say, "Oh, that was just luck." Well, I think we create our luck. I think there is some stuff that is just luck, like when you go next door and play roulette. But the point is, much of our luck is self-created by law of attraction. And so you will pull into yourself. And you'll see a little bit later when we talk about visualization, we're going to not only have those kind of events, you're going to start seeing things that were always there, that were resources for you, like W.H. Smith Bookstore was always there, okay? That will jump out at you and go, "Wow, that's a solution to my problem." But it'll never jump out and go solution to your problem until you first position the problem in your brain called goal, vision, what I want, okay? And we have to keep it in that level of consciousness. Now, another little thing is your number one goal, we want you to use what we call the rule of 5. And that says every day you're going to do 5 things minimum to support that goal. So every day we do 5 things to push out the success principles. 5 radio interviews, send out 5 free copies, write a press release, numbers of things we can do. Every day. When Chicken Soup for the Soul came out on Sunday, day of rest and all that stuff, we would go to churches and give sermons, give the minister a day off and do the sermon. And then in the back of the room, sell Chicken Soup for the Soul. And we sold hundreds, sometimes thousands of copies even on a Sunday. Okay? So the point being that we just kept going. We did a minimum of 5 radio interviews every day for a year with Chicken Soup for the Soul. I mentioned Scott Peck did 3 a day every day for a year, and then 1 a day every day year for 12 years to get his goal out there. How often do you go to the gym, Chaz? 6 days a week. And you take 1 off, which is what all the people teach us we should do to let the body recover a little bit. But see, that's a discipline. And, look at his body compared to most of our bodies. If you want that kind of body, that's what you got to do. It's a commitment, okay? So 5 things a day. Write a letter, do a visualization, ask somebody, call, make a proposal, send out an email. But you do something to keep moving that goal forward. And if you do 5 things a day, and we went to this man who's a very wise person when we wanted to bring our book out, and we said, "What should we do?" And he speaks a lot, almost in parables. He said, "It would be as if you went to a tree with an axe. And if you would go to a tree with an axe and it were sharp, and every day you would take 5 swings at that tree, eventually, even if it was a redwood, it would have to what? Fall down. Okay? So if you'll just go for your goal, if you write 5 pages a day, those of you that want to be authors, 5 pages a day, at the end of the year, you've written over 1,500 pages. That's the equivalent of about 5 books. Okay? And it's not that hard when you really get into it to write 5 pages a day. Most of you know plenty of stuff. The biggest problem is most of us undervalue what we know. Because we go, well, Deepak Chopra already read a book about that. Or Brian Tracy, or Wayne Dyer, or Jack Canfield, or Mark Victor Hansen, or Susie Orman, or John Gray. But here's the cool thing. They're not here right now. If someone else had sat up here the last 2 days and taught you whatever they taught you and said, go to my booth in the back and buy my program, you would have gone and bought their program. Because that's who you would have been exposed to. And John Gray can't get to everyone on the planet. You can get to a group of people that he can't. And so your book, your message, your tape, your program, your service, your product, whatever it is you do, there is a market for it. But you have to be willing to put it out. You have to be willing to make it. And Mark Victor Hansen constantly says to me, you need to write an article about that. And I go, Mark, everyone knows that. He says, no, they don't. I didn't know it, and I'm smart. You know? So there's all kind of stuff you know. Every one of you is an expert on your life, field of interest that you have, etc. And nobody can say it the way you can say it, with your stories and your illustrations. Many of you have had some difficult challenges, but that gives you the ability to speak to other people who've had them, and you can help them come through. Okay? So, rule of 5. Thank you. The goal, as I said yesterday, mastery. Just to remind us, the goal is not the stuff you get. The toys, the money, the bank account, all that's cool. I love it. I have a lot of stuff. I enjoy it. I have a lot of freedom. I take advantage of it. But the real issue is who you become in the process. So remember that. Stretch yourself. Set goals that stretch you, that require you to grow. In that process, you will develop mastery. And that, I really believe, is the true essence of why we're doing this work, is you get to grow, become more self-confident, develop aspects of yourself, learn lessons, develop inner strength, and so forth. Little technique we use in our house. It's called a goalpost. Have family members write their goals down on 3x5 cards, put them on the refrigerator underneath the football goalpost. Everyone in the family knows what everyone's working on. It's a nice little way to get the kids involved with this. And then when they achieve their goals, they get to move them to the top of the goalpost. And they get to brag about it whenever they achieve it. So it's just a nice way to keep everybody playing if you want to get your families involved in this. Another thing about your goal, once you decide what you want, you've got to chunk it down. I love this phrase, success is hard by the yard, it's a cinch by the inch. Little baby steps. You write a book 1 word at a time. You learn to play the piano 1 note at a time. You lift weights 1 repetition at a time. Okay? And one of the great techniques for chunking it down, I don't know who developed it initially, but Tony Buzan is the person that popularized it, that I learned it from. It's called a mind map. And you take your goal and you put it in the middle, create a new audio album. And then you think of every possible thing that would have to be done for that to become reality. And again, if you don't know, ask people who've already done it. And so what we have here is different areas. Like I need an audience because I like to do it live. So what do I have to do to get an audience? First, I have to have a letter. I've got to have a budget for that letter. I need to send it, type it, write it. I've got a lunch that I've got to feed people, so we've got to figure out what it is and get that catered. I've got follow-up calls to make sure the people that got the letter are going to get there. I need to have a release form that they're going to sign, and we need to type it, take it, and get it passed out and signed by everybody. I need money if I'm going to do that. A lot of you have mentioned on your goals, we need to raise the money. How do we do that? We have to have a proposal. Maybe we can go to the bank. We'll ask friends up here. We're going to have a case to put the audio things in. Well, we're going to have a budget for that. We're going to have to get bids from people. We're going to have to choose one, get prototypes. I'm going to have to rehearse this. I might want to tape it, listen to it, and edit it as a rehearsal. Are there any props I'm going to need? Like if I tell a story about Roger Crawford, in his tennis game, I might want to bring a tennis racket, so I think that through. Anyway, I go through every possible thing. I need graphics. I have to write a biography, the inside cover, the back cover, the tape titles. I need a headshot for the back cover, a picture for the cover, choose photographer, book the shoot date, review the contact sheet, choose the picture, get the color separations done. On it goes, 6 topics. 6 or maybe 12 topics. I usually do 6 CDs or 6 tapes, and so I've got 12 sides. Got to write the script. First I outline it, research it. So a lot of things to do. So what you do is you just brainstorm every possible thing you might have to do to get this done. You might leave some things out because you're not clear, but you'll learn them as you go. You'll figure them out. You'll trip over them. And what will happen then is I'll now take this and I start to put this in a schedule. What has to happen first? And I get it all laid out. Now I can hold my staff accountable. We can delegate part of this. I can do the parts I need to do. We have a deadline by which we need it done, and we move forward with the project. And if you do that with each of your goals, and it is a little time consuming, but any great corporation will do this. They call it planning. All the division heads get together and figure out what their goals are going to be and how they're going to achieve them, and they create a strategic plan, and they work it. And that's why most corporations do very well, because they work their plan. But you have to have one. This is a very powerful and simple way to do this. And I usually do it with one other person. So I might sit down with Patty or sit down with someone else on my staff, and we just brainstorm every single possible thing, put it on the mind map, and then go back and we put it into a schedule. Does that make sense? How many of you have done that before? Excellent. Works, doesn't it? Yep. Okay, good. So plan your work and work your plan. Very simple idea. But if you make a plan and then you stick to it, things will happen. And things will come out of nowhere. I mean, you will find lots of synchronous things happen, but it comes out of your intention. And when you're doing this, yourself takes yourself seriously. And as you focus on it, you're sending out those waves into the universe. People are responding. Sometimes it happens faster, but you want to do that. Visualize and affirm your desired results is already complete. How many of you are currently using visualization in your life? Can I see? How many of you are currently using it, but you're probably not doing it as much as you should do it? Okay, that's probably more what's true. So I found visualization to be one of the most powerful tools I've ever learned. And we're going to demonstrate to you now and again after lunch some of the profundity of this. But let me just do a really quick exercise with you to show you how profound this really can be. Would everyone just stand up, put your notes on a chair? Go ahead and stretch for a minute, just however you want to do that. Okay, good. Now, put your feet about shoulder width apart. And in a moment, just watch me. Don't do this yet or your arm will get tighter than it needs to. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to lift your right arm up. This will be my left, so I'm going to mirror you. And I'm going to ask you to turn as far as you can until you can't twist any further. And notice where your hand's pointing. Mine's pointing right to the middle of that red flower. Anyone know what that's called? Anthurium? Anthurium, okay. So the red flower right there. And and when you do this, you're not going to be pivoting on your feet. Your feet are going to be glued to the floor. Nice, solid stance, but you can bend your knees if you want, but your feet don't pivot, okay? And when you can't turn any further, you just pretend there's a laser beam pointing off the end of your hand and notice where it's pointing. Now, some of you are right next to people. If you're turning, do not hit them in the head. However, I don't want your turning to be stopped by an obstacle called person there, but rather by your inability to torque or twist your body any further, so you can just bend your elbow, keep twisting, re-extend as best you can. And the key here is just to, we're going to see where that is. We're going to mark that. So it's a measurement. And then we're going to do something that I think will blow your minds and give you an opportunity to transcend the current level of your production and effectiveness in life. So let's put our arm up. And we're going to go ahead and turn, go as far as you can. When you can't go any further, notice where your hand is pointing. And also notice what's to the right and what's to the left. Kind of get a digital picture of what's surrounding that point. And whenever you feel like you've got that, come on back to the middle and lower your arms. Now, if that gave you a stitch in your side, you need Peggy's DVD, okay? All right, so now what I'd like you to do is close your eyes. And with your eyes closed, we're just going to imagine lifting that arm and moving it. So your arms will actually stay by your side, but just imagine that you're lifting your right arm again, Imagine that you're twisting it across your body the same direction you went last time, but this time you're able to go another foot to 2 feet further than the last time. There's no strain, there's no effort, there's no pain. You're just able to go further. Create a new mental picture of where your hand would be pointing. Use what you remember from what you saw and create a new picture of where your hand would be pointing now. Make it vivid, make it clear, make it real, see it in color. Think it or visualize it as clearly as you can. And then imagine bringing your arm back to the middle and down to your side. Your eyes are still closed. We're going to imagine that one more time. So with your eyes still closed, imagine lifting your right arm. Imagine it moving across your body. You go to the first spot. You go once again to the second spot. No pain, no effort. Just able to go further and see it clearly in your mind. Create that visual picture. Use the power of your creative mind. Excellent work. Then imagine bringing your arm back to the middle, down to your side, and then we're going to open our eyes. And we're going to raise our arm up one more time and move your arm across your body the same direction. Go as far as you can. See how far you can go. Notice what happens. And come on back to the middle. By show of hands, how many of you went further? No, 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 no. Okay, take a seat for just a moment. I'll talk about it for a few minutes, then we'll go to lunch. Your brain is what the scientists call a teleological mechanism. Teleological is a fancy Greek term for goal seeking. If you set a goal and you visualize it clearly, your brain will do everything it can to figure out how to bring that into manifestation and reality. You do it all the time now. It's called worrying. Okay? It's called imagining the worst, expecting something bad to happen, being afraid that something's going to happen. Hale talked about that at great depth and did an exercise with you. So we can use that same principle, that same reality of how your brain works for you as opposed to against you. There's something we call the difference between a catastrophic and an anastrophic expectation. A catastrophic expectation is you expect something bad to happen. An anastrophic is you expect something good. So if you're going to waste your time expecting rather than just being in the moment, why not at least do it positively? Okay? I'm sitting on a plane, flying to Orlando. A lady next to me is gripping the seats, and we're in the runway, going down the runway to take off, and she's got the white knuckle thing going. And I said, excuse me, I'm a psychologist and a trainer, and I'm just curious. I noticed you're gripping the seat really tightly, and you look a little scared. She wasn't breathing very well. And I said, would you be willing to tell me what you're imagining or thinking? She says, well, I just see the plane blowing up at the end of the runway. And I said, well, that'll do it. So I said, would you grant me the leverage for a moment to assist you to maybe not be so nervous? She said, of course. And I said, well, do me a favor, close your eyes. And I said, where are you heading to? She said, Orlando, where the plane was going. I said, well, are you going down there to visit somebody or something? She said, we're going to Disney World. And I said, alone? So I'm meeting my grandchildren there. And I said, what's your favorite ride at Disney World? Oh, she said, oh, it's a small world. And I said, great. I said, imagine yourself in the small world ride, and you're going through, and I started, going, it's a small world after all, it's a small world after all. It's one of my favorite rides, too. So I said, and all of a sudden I was watching her hands relax, her breathing started to come in, and she was with her grandchildren in one of those gondolas, and it's a small world. And now her body was responding to what? The image of being in It's a Small World. So she was having an anastrophic, a positive expectation, positive image, and her body was responding accordingly, as opposed to the scary image, and then her body was responding with a fear reaction. So we have a choice. And it's important to utilize this choice because your body, well, let me demonstrate this real quick. This will be the last thing we'll go to. All stand up one more time. Put your notes on the chair. And if you would, close your eyes. And with your eyes closed, imagine that you're standing in the middle of a very small terrace on top of one of the tallest buildings in the world, like the Sears Tower, the Transamerica Building, the Empire State Building. And look down at your feet in your mind's eye. Notice what you're standing on. Are you standing on asphalt, marble, concrete, wood, metal, tile, granite? What's it made out of? And then imagine looking up and seeing what time of day it is. Is it daytime or nighttime, sunrise or sunset? And as you look up, you can see what the weather's like. Is it overcast or sunny? You can feel the sun or the breeze or the cold on your skin. You can hear some sounds up there. They might be traffic noises, wind, helicopters, air conditioning systems, whatever it might be. Notice what you hear. And in a moment, I'm going to ask you to walk to the edge of the terrace, but I want you to realize there's no railing at the edge of this terrace. So very slowly and carefully, walk over to the edge of the terrace. And when you get there, put your toes right up against the edge and look down. And as you're looking down, way, way down below, little tiny dots, people and cars, notice what you're feeling in your body. And then allow yourself to walk or crawl back to the middle of the terrace. And when you get back to the middle, open your eyes. Now, by show of hands, how many of you felt something happen in your body as a result of doing that? Okay, go ahead and take a seat for just a second. Here's a very important principle about imagery and visualization. Your body cannot tell the difference between a real event and a vividly imagined event. You just experienced that. Some of you felt sweaty palms, heart racing, shallow breathing, nauseousness, dizziness. Some of you were swaying. Some of you were pulling back like this. It was really cute to watch. But where was your body really? Right here. What was it responding to? The image. Now here's a very interesting question. Who put the image in your head? I said words, you created image. Someone says plane flight, and some people go, yeah, and other people go, oh no, because they have different images. I say dog, some people see a little Chihuahua, Bichon Frise, someone else sees a big snarling pit bull, you know. The reality is, the images you put in your head, your body cannot tell the difference between a real event and a vividly imagined event. Now, there's good news and bad news about that. The bad news is you can scare the hell out of yourself. And there are some examples of where people have literally scared themselves to death. Okay? I write about one of them in my book. The good news is you can rehearse anything in your mind and get a physiological benefit. I'll share one research study, then we're done. Ohio State University takes 15 kids, 5 in 3 groups. They say to one group, we want you to practice shooting foul shots every day for 30 minutes. They say to the next group, we want you not to touch a basketball for 30 days. That's it. They said to the third group, we want you to not touch a basketball for 30 days, but we want you to visualize for at least 10 or 15 minutes shooting foul shots, and every one of them goes in, nothing but net, slam dunk, swish. At the end of the study, they had the kids go back out and shoot foul shots, and they had tested them in the beginning. These were equally skilled kids. The group that didn't practice at all showed no improvement. The group that practiced every day for a half hour showed 24% improvement, The kids who did not touch a basketball once for 30 days, but practiced in their mind for 15 or 20 minutes a day, showed 23% improvement. Now, it would have been cool if there was a fourth group that did what? Both. Probably would have got higher. They just didn't do that in the study. Maybe they did later. I never saw it. But the point is that you can literally build skills, improve performance, and more importantly, I believe, to what we're doing here, you can actually program yourself so that you will do and see and perceive and have creative ideas to achieve the goals you've written down this morning.
You have reached the end of this disc, but there's more. Just go to the next DVD. To resume listening to this course on audio CD, please go to CD number 28.